Hi there, it's Anne of Rosie Duck Designs here. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to feature one of my favourite stamp sets, and that is the Daisy Lane stamp set. I really love the fact that there are in fact two coordinating punches that work with this stamp set. It's the large daisy and also the medium size daisy punch. Now I'm going to feature the medium size, which works with this image here. And again, I'm going to be highlighting one of the new In Colours, and this time I'm going for the very soft and very pretty colour of pale papaya. I'm also going to be using one of my favourite products from the new catalogue, and that is this beautiful In Colour Vellum. Now, if you haven't seen this, I think it's a couple of videos ago when I introduced the new In Colours, I did share all 5 of the colours. I'm just going to stand up, and I'm hoping if I tilt that towards the light, you can see the shimmer. If you see more of my hand than anything else, but I'm hoping you're catching the shimmer that is on the surface of that paper. It's absolutely beautiful. And of course it's shimmery, so of course I love it, but I really wanted to highlight it in a project sooner rather than later, because it is lovely, and as I say, the fact it's available in all 5 of the colours is absolutely brilliant. I think vellum always softens a card, but when you can then add a coloured vellum, it just takes it up another whole level. I'm actually going to be stamping onto the vellum, and therefore I'm going to do that part of the stamping first. Because of the texture of the paper, or the vellum for want of a better way of putting it, it can take a little bit of a while for the ink to dry, so I don't want to be stamping it and then trying to punch it out straight away. I've made a version of this card which is on my Facebook page using the fresh freesia, and I have to say that when I stamped the image, the lines from the image were quite pale, so I do kind of question whether it's worth it, but up close you can see a little bit of detail. In fact, I'm seeing more detail on this one than I did on the fresh freesia, so probably best to ignore just everything I've said. But if you don't fancy stamping it, you could just cut it straight out and you would still finish up with a very acceptable daisy. Hoping I've cut this big enough to get the 4 daisies on. That would be about right, wouldn't it? That might be a bit tight. We'll see. Okay, that's my first issue, so I'm going to put that to one side and just let that dry for a moment. I'm then going to take my base card, which is cut at my normal sizes of 6x8, scored at 4 on the long side. Again, I will be doing an accompanying blog post which will give you the equivalent metric measurements and details of all the products that I've used. I'm going to be doing or making this card in the portrait style. I've just burnished the edge of my card there with my bone folder. So if I get halfway through this video and I can't remember what that is called, it's called a bone folder, and if you're not getting that joke, then watch the previous video. Something about this piece of equipment that I cannot, sometimes I just look at it and I go, what is that? Seriously? There you go. So I'm going to add to the front of the card a piece of the new In Color Designer Series paper, and I'm going to use the coordinating pale papaya paper. Now these are 2 of the designs. Again, if you haven't met these yet, you can go back to the last but one video where I have introduced the In Colours, and I shared the details of the new designer series paper, so go and check that out if you haven't done so already. I'm going to go with this square pattern because it's a little bit brighter than what we've got on the other side. I need to turn it over that way to stick down. And again, I'm going to keep the inside of the card very, very simple by just adding a strip of the coordinating designer series paper. Just to be a little bit different, I might just flip it over this time so we've got a different pattern on the inside to the outside. So that's just centralised. Here's my bit of designer series paper for the inside. Cut that as usual at 1/2 inch by 4.5, and I'm going to stick it into the card here and then trim the excess. But I'm going to use that side just for a change. I'm going to put some glue along here. I'm not going to go right to the end because it's obvious that if it's 1/2 inch longer than it needs to be, then I'm going to be trimming this bit off. But as I've said before, sometimes if your measurements are not quite 100%, which mine quite often aren't, if you cut it exactly at 4 inches, then you can finish up with a bit of white card that you didn't particularly want at the end. And I've gone for 4.5 just because it's quite easy to measure and convert to metric, if I'm totally honest. I mean, go with 4.25, you wouldn't go too far wrong with that. But what's 1/4 inch? So that is all I'm going to do in the middle of this card. As I mentioned before, I mean, you could of course put a sentiment in there. There's some nice sentiments in this particular stamp set, but it would work for a number of occasions. So you could go straight ahead and put your sentiment in there. As I said before, I like to have a little bit of a stack of cards. When you need a card and you're not expecting to need a card, you can either leave it blank, write your message, or grab hold of the sentiment that suits the occasion and your ink pad and one simple stamp, and you've got a card ready to go. So that's once again where I'm going with this particular card. Now I have a piece of the pale papaya card, and that is cut at 3 by 4, and I'm going to be adding some little daisy stamps. So I'm using this stamp, and I'm just going to be stamping a few daisies over front of the card. Random pattern, nothing nothing obvious going on, I have to say. Perhaps we'll have one going over the edge there. Now some of this isn't going to be seen because it's going to be covered up, but sometimes just to get the feel of it, it's easier just to go right across. You try and get too clever and avoid the bit where you're going to be sticking something else. It sometimes doesn't always work. Possibly overdoing it if I do another one up there. We'll leave it. Less is more and all that. Actually, while I've got my ink pad, let's do the envelope. Now again, if you didn't want to put the designer series paper strip across the inside of the card, you could of course use this little stamp in the corner just to pretty it up a little bit. So I'm going to do one over there, one over here, and one in the middle on the back there. Although I may have shimmery vellum paper, I have to have Wink of Stella as well. It goes without saying. And all I'm going to do with the Wink of Stella is actually just highlight the centres of the daisies. just going to add that little bit of extra detail on the envelope as well. Brighten the postman's day as he delivers the letter. I can hear footsteps on the stairs, which might mean there's a cup of tea coming my way. That would be good. Or perhaps not, the footsteps are fading. Because we're going to have some shimmery vellum going on in the middle, I think, even by my standards, doing all the daisies in Wink of Stella might be a little bit over the top. There we go. So that is going to go into the centre of our card. There we go. And then I've got a piece of the vellum which is cut at 1 3/4 by 3, and that's just going to fit over the edge of the card that I've just stamped the daisies on. Now one side is plain and the other side has got the shimmer on it. As the light fades, it can be difficult to see which is which, so just check that out before you stick it down. So I'm going to put some Stampin Seal on the back here. So as you can see, I have covered up some of my daisies that I've stamped, but never mind, you know they're there and you can just about see the outline of them. I'm going to add to that a central piece, and I've cut that out in basic white card stock, and I've cut that out using one of the dies from the Hippo and Friends dies. I love this this die set. It's got the hippo sheep horse that turns into a unicorn and a butterfly, and that little balloon's quite handy. I've got to be honest that it's not really the animals that attracted me to this particular set of dies, although I do have the coordinating stamp set. I've had the most use out of the actual dies, these dies here, because they're just brilliant for cutting out pieces of card to add your sentiments, just adding those layers to your card, or even cutting a window in effect in the front of your card. So a very versatile, handy set, and it's that one that I've used to cut out this little piece of card here. Now if you are not having, or you don't have a die cut machine at this moment in time, that's not a problem. You could just use a simple square on the front there, and that is cut at more or less 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. I think it's nearer 2 by 2 if I'm honest, but I've actually rounded the corners using the detail trio punch, as I've done in the last couple of videos. That's a really handy punch to have, because it just, whilst the square's fine, it just really gives you that tidy edge on your pieces of card, that sort of nice rounding of the corners. In fact, I'd probably go for something like 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. That just makes sure that you've got then some of your vellum showing It's a little bit bigger than that. So yeah, certainly cut that down to 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. But the idea of this little piece is just to show you that you don't have to have a die cut machine. Nice, but it's not essential. So I'm going to move on now to punching out the daisies. I'll start with the easy end first. I think that's the order of the day. And what I'm going to do, having lined up my daisy, you can just bring your punch down, but without the pressure that's actually going to take actually punch the daisy out, but it just holds it in place to give you the opportunity to make sure that you're happy with where you're going to punch. So that's my first one. Now it seems a little bit pointless to have you sit there and watch me punch 4 daisies out. A little bit time consuming. So that's my first one. And what I'm going to do with each of them is take my bone folder. That's twice in one video. I remember what it's called. Things must be getting better, she said. So I'm just taking my bone folder and I'm just gently, because it's quite a fine paper, but I'm just gently bending up those leaves. I'm going to punch out the other 4 and do exactly the same with them. So I will just pause the video while I do that, and then we'll come back and put the daisy together. So there I have now punched out all of my 4 daisies, and here they are with the petals just turned up. Just got away with that one, I have to say. Now the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm probably going to regret, but I have found that the surface of the vellum paper, because it has this texture to it, I'm struggling to stick things like glue dots or mini stamping dimensionals to it. So when I made this card, or a similar card to this before, I found that the best glue that would actually hold it is the one that I don't get on that well with, the Tombow. Brilliant glue. I just don't think it's designed for people who get in a mess easily like I do. But I'm going to go for it this time. Let's get my little bit of card over here. There we go. So you're not going to need a lot. We're just going to put some in the centre. And what I'm trying to achieve is sticking 2 lots of daisies together. So I'm going to interlock the petals like so. You can avoid sticking it to your grid pad as well. It's also a good plan. What have I managed to do to this one? I have to admit I didn't even see that happen. There we go. That will do. I'll put that on the bottom. Then I'm going to put a little level of glue on here. And then I'm going to get a stamping dimensional, a mini one, and I'm going to just put that on there. So the plan is that this, although it's sticky in its own right, the glue will hold it. I'm going to just let that dry for a moment. Now on the back here it doesn't have the same texture, so this sticks quite happily. Now I want to try and pull off the... If I wasn't filming this, I might just leave that for a little bit longer, but we'll just go for it. And I'm just going to put that one on top of the other. Then you can squeeze it together because you can always separate the petals later on. And then I'm going to take a larger stamping dimensional, and again, because this is the smooth side, that will stick without any problem whatsoever. It's probably me, if I'm honest, but I was really struggling to get it to stick, so I just thought let's go with the Tombow because I do know it's a brilliant glue and it will work. Whether I can work with it is another issue, but there you go. I think we've kind of got there. So I'm just going to stick my little daisy there on the top of my little cutout piece of basic white card. Then I want that raised up from the card front. So I will stick another 4 stamping dimensionals on the back there. Just pop that on the front. Once you're happy that it's all stuck, then you can just tease up the leaves just to give it that little fullness of a flower. And just to finish that off, I'm going to just add some of these champagne rhinestones. I think the colouring of that will work quite well with the pale papaya. So I'm going to stick one in the middle of the daisy. Have another one over here. Another one on this corner. So we've got a straight line basically. And that is our finished card. We got there. So another card featuring one of our new In Colours. It's probably not quite central, is it? Looking at that, but there we go. I think that's better. So there we go. Again, a very simple card, again using a punch, which just gives that little bit of extra detail to your cards. So I hope that's been of some help to give you some ideas of what you can do, and as an introduction to our lovely new vellum paper. So thank you so much for joining me. I will, as I said earlier, put a blog post on the front of the video when I've written it, which will have all the measurements and product details in it. Links to my shop, my blog, etc. will be on the front. What I would say is head to my blog, because all the information is on there. You can download a PDF of the new annual catalogue from there, and lots of other information all down the sidebar of my blog. So that's it for now. I'll be back with something else. I might change things up a bit and have a look at something else, some other new products from the catalogue, so moving away slightly from the In Colours. But whatever it is, I will be back. But until then, do look after yourselves. I'm not sure if I've said this. If you've enjoyed the video, a thumbs up would be appreciated. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that would be great. That way you don't miss out on any tutorials. They're always good for a laugh, if nothing else. how not to craft. But there you go. Thanks once again for joining me. I will be back very soon. Until then, take care. Bye for now.